JDs and gentlemen, let's tip the grand final. This will be the final tip I will do this season, the final game of the season, and it all comes down to two non-Victorian teams. We've got obviously the Sydney Swans, who will be taking on the Brisbane Lions. Now, we have got no Victorian teams in the grand final, which I don't think has happened since 2006, I believe, which was between Sydney and the West Coast Eagles. So it's been a hot fucking minute since that has happened. But as you can see on screen, we have got the final game to predict. Now, look, let's say one thing for sure. I think this will be a cracker game. Both teams coming off grand final losses in the most recent grand finals. Sydney in 2022, Brisbane in 2023. So I think the harsh reality of this game is someone's going to be double heartbroken, which you never want to see, and particularly with teams that I personally don't have a problem with either of these teams. I like them both, so I don't really want to be seeing either team lose, to be honest. But someone's going to be really heartbroken, like particularly badly heartbroken, and that's the reality of the game here. So who do I predict? Who do I want to win? Etc, etc. Let's get into the tips right now and not waste any more time. Now, the first thing I want to do is let's have a talk about head-to-head. We did this in the prelims. The favourites, by the way, are Sydney, and we'll get onto why they're favourites. But head-to-head, the most recent game was round 19. Sydney were already dipping in form here, but the Lions got the job done by 2 points. Earlier this year in round 1, Brisbane also got the win over the Sydney Swans. Hang on, something's not quite right. Oh, sorry, that was like a pre-season game. Fucking hell. Okay, ignore that one. Ignore that one. So the one this season, Brisbane got the job done over them, and then we go down to next year where Brisbane also get the job done over them. In terms of form, we can talk about form now. You would probably say the form is slightly in Brisbane's favour. Look, the reality of this grand final is it's the two best teams all year. You have the best team all year being Sydney, first on the ladder, versus the most informed team, Brisbane, who looked down and out after 3, 4, 5, 6 rounds, and then they just come back firing. And geez, you would be dumb to tip against them. But the reality is someone's got to get the heartbreak, and who's it going to be? You'll find out in a second. Injuries. No big injuries, I believe, to Sydney. I don't think. But the big injury to Brisbane is Oscar McInerney is out. He did his shoulder twice, and he's going to be replaced by most likely Darcy Fort, but I believe there's a young lad who is also waiting in the wings as a ruckman as Brisbane. Is that enough to change the tide of the game? Yes, it is. Now, luckily, in my opinion, well, and you'll talk to many AFL people's opinion, the ruck is not that important of a position to replace. We've seen year after year the best teams in the league don't really have an amazing ruck. You know, Melbourne's probably the only team in recent history that have had, you know, a top 3 ruckman in the comp play for them. Thinking back, I would say there's more important positions to lose. It's obviously bad losing Oscar McInerney because he's also played mostly as pretty much the sole ruck all season, so it's the worst time to happen. And the reality is you just cannot risk playing someone who's done their shoulder twice the game before in a grand final. So he's going to be replaced. And I think the reality for Brisbane midfielders is this whole week they're going to be looking at Brodie Grundy's hit-outs, because he's winning most of the hit-outs, you would assume. And suddenly the most important players in the game, I think, are Darcy Fort if he plays, or whatever ruckman plays for Brisbane is the most important player. And then the midfielders for Brisbane, because they have to know how Brodie Grundy hits it out. You know, usually you would prepare for your ruckman to be not the dominant one, but you would have those patterns of play ready. But the reality is Brisbane are better off looking at what Brodie Grundy will do than what a Darcy Fort might do this week. So a lot of onus comes down to them. And for Sydney, you've already got the upper hand on this. Also, the extra week's break throughout the finals, more rest. Brisbane, they've been involved in 2 insanely close finals. Obviously, the Carlton one wasn't, but the Giants one and the final against Geelong, the prelim, were so close that maybe you could argue that they're a bit drained or something. Where Sydney, they did have Port Adelaide, which was a really easy game, and the Giants was obviously a really hard game. But the rest, I feel like, is more towards Sydney. I think the head-to-head, I think Brisbane match up pretty well against Sydney, and we've seen that in recent years, but Port Adelaide, you know, they had the wood over Sydney. Sydney hadn't beaten them for like 8 games or something crazy, and that went all out the window. And I think those kind of history things don't really matter in this context, at least. It's at a neutral ground, so who plays the MCG better? We all know Brisbane are shocking at the MCG. I think they've got the lowest win percentage since Fagan's been in the comp, but you know, they beat Geelong there, so recent, you're only as good as your last game. And the last game at the G, they won. In Sydney's the last game at the MCG. Let me look this up for you really quick. I would be surprised if they had one recently. That's down to round Marvel, SCG, Adelaide, You got to keep scrolling all the way down here. According to this, the last time Sydney played at the MCG was round 7 against Hawthorn, who they did beat by 76 points, but this is before Hockball came into it. And then they played against Richmond at the MCG. Richmond beat them by 5 points. Richmond beat them at the MCG. And they beat Collingwood at the MCG this season as well. So their form's interesting at the MCG. Both have been, look, it's not the home ground. Obviously, they're not going to be great there. But I think if you're Sydney, I think spreading that ground out, the big ground of the MCG might suit them a little bit more. So if I had to choose more of a favourable trait that the home ground advantage, well, who's more favoured by the MCG? If I had to choose a team, I think it's just the Sydney Swans, if you add everything I've just talked about. Who do I want to win the grand final is obviously also going to come into it. Implicit bias. I have bias, you have bias watching. We're all going to have bias. And my bias is towards neither team. My second team is the Swans, because I have a lot of relatives in Sydney, but I also love the Lions. And every final the Lions have played, except when they're against Richmond, I actually want them to win. I really like their team, I like their coach, I like their game style, they're fun. So that's why I'm kind of like torn about this game. Every year Richmond haven't been in the grand final, I've got an obvious team. Last year, I wanted Brisbane to win. Fuck, I wanted Collingwood to lose. The year before that, who was it? I wanted the Swans to beat Geelong. The year before that, who was that? I actually wanted Melbourne to beat the Dogs, just because I thought they hadn't won it for so long. And then obviously Richmond had all the grannies. In 2018, I wanted West Coast to slaughter the Pies, and thank fuck they got over the line there. In all the Hawthorn flags, I wanted the other team to win. Freo, Swans, West Coast, and the Swans again. You keep going down. Basically, if I can get the Victorian team to lose, I'm happy. But two of my more liked teams here. So I don't think I have much implicit bias. Now, everything we've discussed, everything online, everything you look at, the favourites are the Sydney Swans. And I think if I had to choose a team that is more likely to win based off that, it obviously would be the Swans. But I'm going to tip the Brisbane Lions. I'm tipping the Brisbane Lions, and that is purely off the basis of a guess. And a tip is a prediction. And I think despite the troubles I've talked about already in this video, that most things are against Brisbane, I think the run they've had, I think they're going to come out, and I think their game style against Sydney and just the hurt of last year's grand final, the fact they're so close, I think I'm more geared towards that. I'm more sort of going that way than the way the Swans. But it must be said, I think there's only a few outcomes of this game. Thank you, Michael Owen. One team wins, one team loses. But I think there's one thing for sure. I don't see Brisbane dominating Sydney. I think there is a possibility Sydney will absolutely smoke the Lions. They might be tired, and that's a possibility. But I think it'll be a grand final for the ages. And my prediction, and I don't usually do points, but I'm going to go with Brisbane by the 11 points. I think they're going to be sort of ahead most of the game. The Swans will come back. And then in that last quarter, I just think it comes down to grit and determination. And I associate with Brisbane a bit more than that in recent history as well. They've got the finals history too, is something to note. And I guess both teams have that grand final experience, so you can't really separate them there. It's really hard. What do you do? Who do you tip? I've gone with Brisbane. So let me know in the comments who your tip would be. Thanks for watching. And here's to what could be a great grand final.